Want some tips to optimize your job search right now, today? We've got you covered. Let's go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Game Industry Job Hunt Podcast. This is episode 5. My name is Joe King. I'm your host. And hey, we got a great one for you today. I'm pretty excited about this. Today we're talking to career coach Adam Hobbs. Adam has 10 years of experience in the games industry. Much of that he has used to help his coaching clients find their way and get their career started and improve their careers and their situation. And so I managed to get him on the show to share some of that wisdom and that knowledge with us. So we're going to do that today. In the meantime, hey, do me a favor. Wherever you're listening to this show on, please leave a review. Let us know how we're doing here. Good reviews are great, but any feedback is welcome. Good reviews, though, will help the show grow, and that's always good. So if you can leave a good review, I mean, that would be really cool. But either way, do that. Check out GameIndustryJobHunt.com for resources, links, show notes, all of that good stuff. And yeah, hey, let's stop wasting time and let's talk to Adam Hobbs, career coach extraordinaire. Adam Hobbs is the CEO of GamingCareers.gg and let me get this right here, Adam, an IAP C and M certified career coach. Hope I got that. Specializing in the gaming and esports industries. He puts his over 10 years of experience to good use helping his clients with a wide range of services, including career development coaching, resume writing and review, LinkedIn profile optimization, and a lot more. Adam, welcome to the show, and thanks a lot for being here. I've really been looking forward to chatting with you, man, honestly.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's really good to be here. And yeah, I'm always excited to talk about career development in games, esports, all things gaming. So yeah.
Well, you have come to the right place. You've come to the right place, my friend. So I'll just kick it off and just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started, in career coaching in the games industry. How did that come about?
Yeah, so all throughout my my gaming career journey, I'd always been like a leader, more or less. And as time went on, I really realized that my favorite part of leadership was coaching and mentoring. And I thought to myself, gee, how could I turn this into a business? Something that's going to help people. And one of the things that I experienced as somebody who, was in the public eye, especially when I was working in esports for a little while, you have a tendency to really be, on the front lines with fans. They know you by name. And they would ask advice all the time about how to break into the industry. What do I need to do? Do you have any internships? And it just kind of gave me this sense of like, yeah, you know what? I think the perception is that there's this giant high wall to climb, and that we as the people who were lucky enough to get into this industry are part of some secret society, some impenetrable fortress that only the lucky few get through. And I'm just like, no, it's not like that at all. In fact, I have a rags to riches or like an outsider coming in story of my own.
Same.
Where I struggled for years to try to get into this industry. I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of. I knew it had huge opportunity for growth and to really go someplace with my career. I'd been in entertainment before then. And I'm telling you, Joe, I knew people at EA, I knew people at Blizzard, and I would get rejections, I would get interviews and not get the gig. And it was just sort of like, what am I doing wrong? And I had to kind of regroup and figure something out. And when I used my own marketing experience to kind of like repackage and sell myself, it like a light bulb went off. And I was like, man, I think everybody could really benefit from this. So it was sort of like my own lived experience and those kind of principles that helped me to launch GamingCareers.gg it says it on my LinkedIn that my mission is to help as many people as possible in their games careers, and that's true. So that's why I'm really active on LinkedIn and on a bunch of Discord servers, and I have an email, newsletter that goes out pretty frequently, and then of course, people work with me as their career coach. So yeah, that's kind of the net. Let me know if I need to fill any blanks there.
No, yeah, we have time to fill in the blanks. That's not a problem. Yeah, I feel you on the sort of unconventional path in, and like I said, I kind of have a similar story where I didn't have any experience at all, and just was a really big fan of the Borderlands series, and then Gearbox needed a community manager, and I sort of thought, oh, I can figure out how to do that. Famous last words, and but I did, I started doing like a contract role for them, and then one thing kind of led to another. So you never know. You never really know sort of what your path into this industry could be like. And I've heard of people that start like me that get lucky and they start out in AAA somehow. And then there are other people that just are, AAA is their dream, and it just takes forever to get there. So it's interesting to hear people's stories like that. And I've found in other cases that there's people I've talked to have similar stories to me and you, where it's just sort of, you really want to do it, you work really hard, there's an element of luck in there, and then you're eventually able to work it out.
You're right. I mean, there's luck, but luck favors the prepared.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And when I'm working with people on a one-on-one basis, it really is just sort of like helping them shore up the best version of themselves that they can take to market, if they are looking for jobs. And I will say this too: I'm also working with people who have jobs and are trying to figure out, okay, where do I go next, right? I'm having an existential career crisis. I have trouble negotiating promotions and salaries. I've been working as a freelance talent and I want to go full time. I've been working full time and I want to start my own venture. I work with people all over, from end to end, in their career journeys. But obviously right now, because things are a little, shaky with the industry, the job
Just a
market
little.
is yeah. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy, because, people are getting hired.
Yeah.
The talent pool is a little bit deeper, that much we can all agree on. But what you'll find is, even with people who are like really experienced, right? I'm working with people who have been working for 20 years in games, and it's shocking how little they know how to sell themselves.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's hard. You've got a really great resource on your website that's, correct me on what it's actually called, but it's basically a checklist for your LinkedIn, a basic 3-step checklist of how you can improve your LinkedIn. But there's a lot of other information in there that's really great. And that's one of the things that I think is important to remember is there are benefits to having a career coach and talking to somebody when you're not looking for a job. And getting resources like that when you're not looking for a job. There are lots of reasons to do that. Another thing that it makes me think of is networking. It's the same with networking. You need to network when you don't need a job and when you don't need something from people, as opposed to the opposite. So, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I saw you post something on LinkedIn that was really interesting recently. I think it was about a month ago, and I wanted to dig into it a little bit with you. It was the 5 N's. So the idea basically being that the 5 N's represent areas that you can use to sort of help assess your progress or lack of progress in your job search. Talk about that concept a little bit and dig into that, because I found it really, really fascinating that there are these areas, these 5 areas that you can sort of always keep an eye on. And then one of the points that you made that really resonated with me was, if something's not going well in one of those areas, you can kind of use the other areas to sort of compensate to an extent and sort of help improve there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I launched this practice almost 4 years ago, kind of as like a moonlighting thing while I was working, on another job. And it was only about, like a year and change, like probably 2 years ago, that I was able to say, like, I'm doing this full time. And, over those 4 years, I've worked with a lot of people, and I wanted to kind of boil down some very specific principles and tools that people can use. And I did some internet research. Groupings of 3s and 5s seem to work really, really well.
Everybody loves a good list of five, the top
Yeah,
five.
exactly. And I wanted to use alliteration, so that's how I came up with the 5 N's. And the 5 N's are niche, networking, nurture, never stop learning, and new ideas. And by niche, I mean whether you're working in a job and you're looking to move forward, or whether you're trying to get into this industry, you're going to be better off positioning yourself as a specialist versus like somebody who is a generalist, somebody who gets
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah.
It's a specialist economy. Very rarely do I hear people say like, "Oh man, I want somebody who really understands everything a little bit," versus like, I want somebody who gets this stuff very specifically and has expertise in there. So, by shoring up that part of your professional story, I think it's really super helpful. Networking, obviously, a little bit more intuitive, but I count that as meeting new people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nurturing is nurturing relationships that you already have. And I think that's something that people often skip, actually. They're like, okay, I met some folks, that's great. And then they don't talk to them again for a year, right? Or they don't reach out to people that they used to work with. And here's my sort of my explanation for this is that like the people who they're going to be your advocates. These are going to be the people who will pick up the phone when you call, will answer your emails instead of ghosting you, and will kind of put themselves on the line for you. So it's
Yeah.
really good to continue to nurture and grow and expand on those relationships. Never stop learning is so when people get stuck. It's there. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why that happens. More often than not, it's because there's some sort of cognitive dissonance, some sort of story that they're telling themselves that's like not allowing them to move forward.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways to do that is to learn something new, right? Because it sort of regenerates it kind of reignites the brains, the synapses are firing. You get a little bit more inspired. I mean, think about like how much how inspired you were when you were in school, whether you're doing your undergrad or your master's program, or if you're lucky enough to have had a PhD, right? Or when you just jump on a certificate program, you're just like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, or it's great that it was explained to me this way, right? That helps the brain stay agile,
Yeah.
and inspires us and gets us to think about like how else we could be approaching our careers, which then leads to the last thing, which is new ideas, right? And because this is such a competitive industry, like new ideas are critical, like at any stage, right? Let's take for instance, like if you're trying to get in, like I've got this great story of a client who. He launched like a indie title that he and a couple other people developed, did pretty good on Steam. They were able to, get a decent following on Twitter and YouTube and everything. And then when he was looking for work himself, he was messaging people from the game's Twitter
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to
From
himself,
the brand
right?
account.
Yeah, and of course they were happy to answer his DMs, but it's just
Yeah.
sort of like that's a new idea that somebody had not that honestly until he mentioned that I was like, wow, I had never even considered that myself,
Oh
right?
yeah, I've done a lot of that myself on Twitter. Especially a few years ago, back when game industry Twitter, quote unquote, was really hopping. And man, I did so much networking on Twitter that just so many people that I now to this day still am in contact with. And I think LinkedIn is really becoming. I mean, obviously LinkedIn is sort of a networking site, of course, but I feel like it's getting even better. I wonder if it's not because of the state of the industry coupled with the state of Twitter, or X as it's now called. But yeah, that's huge. Just sort of whatever platforms you're most active on, trying to follow people from the industry and connect with them. It doesn't just have to be LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's it's that kind of thinking that really kind of helps us, stand out, right? And again, whether you're looking for a job or whether you're someplace already, there's a great book called Lynchpin that really talks about how we position ourselves as like a resource that you cannot live without, right? And almost like positioning our our skills and our aptitude as like art that you're supposed to kind of like give away, right? And it's really really cool. I read that book a long time ago. It really kind of got me thinking about just how important it is to position ourselves and the different ways that we can do that in order to stand out wherever we are in our careers, which really helped me, like help the principle of like niching down as like
Absolutely.
as firm ground to stand on. And to answer your question about like how they sort of work together, so it's funny if you put them together on a piece of paper, it forms this like really kind of interesting pentagram looking thing. But
Hail
yeah,
Hobbs.
exactly. Anybody who's into the occult out there will
Totally.
love this. But the way that I see it is that like if you're feeling stuck in one area, then you can use another one of the ends to kind of push you through, right? So if you're having trouble figuring out like how do I niche down, what is my specialty, maybe go learn something new, right?
Yep.
If you're feeling stuck on some new ideas, like go nurture a relationship that you've had or go network with somebody new so that you can generate some new ideas. Conversations alone with people it can be so powerful, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you approach them with an open mind and you're not there to like beg for some sort of favor.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, hey, it's been a while. I have
It's
always
huge.
enjoyed your intellect and have valued our conversations. Let's shoot the breeze, as it were. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of my philosophy there.
I've gotten kind of into that. December's been a weird month, just busy and things like that. But over the past several months, I've really tried to make an effort in that area of honestly being surprised with how many contacts that I actually have here. I'm in Dallas, Texas, the DFW area, and
I'm in Houston. I think we talked
yeah,
about that.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, but I've really tried to make an effort to get back out and meet friends and contacts for lunch, and that does a lot. That in person, getting together and hanging out and talking in person is huge, and I think
Hmm.
we're all sort of still getting used to that idea again after COVID. Um, and I,
I agree.
a lot of people are talking about predictions for 2025 and whatever area. And one that I'm seeing a lot in the community management area and that I agree with is that I think that a lot of communities and a lot of people are going to start shifting back to in-person events and, being together in real life and building
Hmm.
community in real life, which I think is really cool. So I think, yeah, you're right. You're spot on
Which I
there.
think is a great idea, and I
Yeah,
sure
I
I sure
agree.
hope those predictions are right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, big tip to everybody listening. If there's like an IDGA chapter in your city, or there's other game development or game industry groups around, try to join those and hang out with people and get to know them, and then go to the event, meet a bunch of people, which of course can be super awkward, but once you get there, if you're the type that has a drink, have a drink or two, loosen up a little bit, and then that makes it a lot easier for me at least. And then meet some people and get to know some. Even if you can get to know one person, at go to an event like that and just get to know one person. That's super super valuable. That's huge.
Yeah, agreed. And have a plan. Have a strategy when you
Yeah.
go to these events, or have some sort of idea of what you would like to accomplish. For the smaller like chapter IDGA, I've been to a few of them here in Houston, and it's typically about like 5 or 6 dudes sitting at a picnic table at an ice house. But
Yeah.
for the bigger events like your GDCs or PAXs, to help overcome overwhelm and feel like you got some stuff done there. Just if you roll in with a with a with goals, you'll do a lot better. You'll feel less stressed and kind of more in tune with what it is that you want out of the
Yeah,
event.
and I've actually done that firsthand too, and I think that one thing that helped me several years ago was as much as I love traveling to industry events like PAX and things like that, I was feeling a lot of overwhelm in a lot of different ways and for a lot of different reasons. And I got to the point in late 2019, early 2020 where I sort of decided I'm going to go to this event, and rather than have in my mind all the people that I will potentially meet and all the connections that I'll make, I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to be looking for that one person that I sort of connect with, and there's always one. I feel like every time I go to an event, there's always one person that we end up having lunch, hanging out, walking the show floor together, just getting to know each other a little more. And I decided I'm gonna wait until that one person sort of presents themselves, and then I'm gonna really lean into that, And instead of just sort of having lunch or walking the show floor and then calling it a day and that's it, never see you again. Like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's meet up again. Let's carry this through the weekend or through the week. And I've had really, really good results with that, not only in relationship building, but also just reducing that stress level and that level of overwhelm. It makes it a lot easier when you sort of go into something knowing I'm going to focus on one person. I just don't know who that person is yet. Than thinking about, I have to make sure that I hit this event and I hit this hot spot and meet as many people as I can, because you're meeting a lot of people and that's good, but you're not really building relationships with them. And that really almost defeats the purpose in a way, in my opinion.
I really like that, actually. That's a really good idea. I mean, I often will encourage clients to, go with a wingman or go with a buddy, right? Because
That's
it's
a great
just,
idea too.
it's like you just, you know, going up and like, talking to somebody, super cool. I mean, it's like asking that, your romantic interest out. It's like it can be so
Oh,
uncomfortable,
100%.
right?
100%.
It's a lot easier when you just got a friend there. But flipping that a little bit and saying like, oh, I'm actually going to find the friend at the
Yeah.
event is even cooler, right?
Yeah.
Because then
Absolutely.
it's like
Yeah,
it's a couple
I've
rungs
just
up.
noticed, I feel like there was one time that this happened, actually many years ago, probably in 2017 or 2018. I went to an event and just kind of met this person that I knew online, this guy that I knew online, and we just kind of hit it off, And so we did that. We walked the show floor together and had a couple of meals together and stuff like that. And then I think later, a couple of years later, when I was really feeling that overwhelm, I kind of thought back to that experience and sort of thought, okay, well, why don't I just try to recreate that experience every time? Because that there was clearly a lot more value in that, in approaching it that way, than there was, than there is of, kind of spreading yourself too thin mentally, even from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of people through him, and there were still a lot of people for me to meet, things to talk about, people to talk with, things like that. But it made it a lot easier, sort of knowing that that you're using the term wingman is perfect description. It's sort of knowing that we were each other's wingman through the whole thing made it a lot easier. It really did.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm seeing a lot of conversation about recently is around breaking into the games industry. And, you mentioned earlier that you've gotten lots of questions about that over the years. And actually I have too, even since I first broke in, I had people kind of like, how did you do it? What's the secret sauce, And so, I'm curious as to what your thoughts are as far as what kinds of tips you would give, best strategies, best practices that you would give to a client who's looking to find their first role in the industry, sort of how you would encourage them to approach that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is that there's no magic bullet, right? And that there needs to be, anybody who's doing this, it has to have an open mind. And, whether it's games or working in the film business or working in the music business, all of these, sexy entertainment, related roles are, it's like those worlds are so much different than mainstream stuff, and it does there's just a lot of people clamoring for very few opportunities. So, the way that I look at it is that you kind of have to have like a really good, plan around this. Just like I was talking about with the events, it's like, it's funny because like as gamers, right? every game that we play, if we want to do better, we have to have a strategy.
Yeah.
And I'm always so surprised when I ask people like, well, what is your strategy? And they're like, I don't have one, or it's like, well, I'm just applying and like nothing's happening. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at that, because there might be some things that are like, if you don't have a strategy, all right,
Yeah.
you're going to need one. And if you do have a strategy, and it's not working, well, you got to try something different, right? Foundationally, I think about it across like three different levels. The first, and this is how I like sort of present this philosophy to my clients, is your first level is your story, your paradigm, right? And not looking just at like what your professional story is, but like what is the story that you're telling yourself about yourself, or the story that you're telling yourself about the industry, and trying to break through any limiting beliefs that may be like keeping you or holding you back from like doing something different. Because that's like, if you just believe that there's only one way that this happens, then and then you're just going to keep doing that thing.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know why nothing's happening.
Yeah.
It gets really frustrating. So again, like that open mind, but it really is based in our paradigm and our story. From there, like once you kind of crush level one, then you can graduate to level two, which is sort of opportunities, right? If you've got a better story and a better outlook, then the opportunities are going to actually look a lot different as well. It's like, oh, now I'm seeing where I might actually fit a little bit better, right? And
Absolutely.
I don't think it's about me applying for all of the jobs, but rather like just the ones that make sense for
Yeah.
me, or the ones that make sense for them. A lot of times I'll ask a client like, okay, before you apply for this job, you know, why do you want to work there? Can you name three things that you're going to bring to the table that's going to help them solve problems? And of course, what's the opportunity for you and them, right? And when you've done the story work, that stuff starts to look a lot different. And then you're putting together a vision, for your career,
Yeah.
and you're hitting milestones and goals based on that vision, and you've got an action plan. And then the third level is action, right? Which obviously involves applying for jobs, but that's also building your community, your network of people, your relationships. And that starts to look different as well, because now you're like, oh, I actually have something to contribute. So I'm going to start contributing to, the industry at large, and
Yeah.
and tell a story that might be able to help somebody else out, right? But this idea, and one of the things that I see with a lot of people who are really struggling to get in is like they feel alone, right?
Yeah.
It's like me against the world, right? It's
Hmm.
like, well, we gotta use that philosophy of community in our careers as well. I mean, we'll jump on a Discord community with any game that we love or any interest that we love, and we'll talk all day long about that. But when it comes to our careers, it's just sort of like, yeah, I guess I'm just going to do this on my own.
Yeah.
And
It's like it's different somehow when it's not.
yeah, yeah. I mean, strength
Yeah.
in numbers, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but when you enroll people in your vision, right, and what it is that you want in your career, and you tell them that, it's like it just makes it more real, Then they're
Yeah.
like supporting you and backing you up, and probably keeping you accountable as well, which
100%.
is always really good. So, yeah, I wish there was just sort of like one tip where I can just be like, well, just put more bullets in your resume.
You're
Like
right.
it's just that,
Yeah.
that's just
More metrics.
unfortunately, it's not there. And here's the way I look at it, right? If you're lucky enough to work 40 hours a week, then you can basically surmise that your career is a third of your life, right?
Yeah.
If it's that much of your life, then you really need to invest and strategize, and continually go back to it and be like, am I on, am I in alignment with my vision? Am I doing what I really want to be doing? Is this the right step, right? But when you get that clarity through those three levels that I talked about, it's like everything gets easier. And I'm telling you, like, I have tons of people who have come to me with this exact same problem, and once they've walked through that process with me, they're like, dude, oh my God, like I am, like my eyes are wide open. I'm thinking about stuff differently. I wanted to do this, and now I'm doing that instead. It's like, I'm
It
so glad I
clicks.
didn't do this thing.
Yeah.
because what really matters to me is that thing,
Yeah.
right? And it's just sort of like, you save yourself 10 years of like working at the wrong job.
Which is obviously a huge, huge deal.
Yeah,
That's really helpful.
exactly.
Helpful to save 10 years on anything. Yeah, I mean, one thing you mentioned there, just in the last episode, I was talking to Christina Drake, and we were talking about that principle of not applying for everything,
Hmm.
and that is a really weird concept, I think, for people because, I suffered my last layoff, most recent back in May, and for the first couple of months there, I was just anything that was community manager, social media manager, marketing, this, whatever, communications, whatever. I'm applying
Hmm.
for it. Apply. And I quickly realized something's not working here. This isn't really. For one, I was applying to a lot of companies that weren't even in the games industry, and I wasn't hearing back from any of them. And man, I'm telling you, I still to this day, I think I have yet to hear back from a non-gaming company. I think maybe there was one, but it's been, there's not a lot happening there. So that really made me realize that I need to focus, niche down, as you said earlier, really focus on the roles that I can bring, real serious value to, and I can, communicate that value. And that's what I started doing. And I started getting more action. Like it really worked. It really worked. I started getting more
Good.
calls back, more interviews, things like that. So
It's
yeah, that's
exactly what I see
100%
with
the
my
way to go.
clients too, who are just like, they're those like application counters on like LinkedIn. I have applied to
Yeah.
2,396 and I've only gotten 3 interviews. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work, man
Yeah.
or woman.
Yeah, I've seen those posts too. I've seen those posts too, and man, they're just terrifying. I mean, I saw one a couple months ago where someone posted that, if I remember correctly, it was something like they had applied for something like 1,000 jobs, and they only had 3 interviews, and like in
Hmm.
a year.
Hmm.
And that tells me there's something wrong. I mean, I'm no expert, but there's something wrong in the process or the resume, or there's something happening
Hmm.
that's stopping you before you really get started, And so yeah, that's just it's a big thing to look at. I think is what kinds of roles are you focusing on? You said earlier to focusing on certain companies is always a great idea, And
Yes.
I think there's a ton of value in sort of if you're finding yourself stuck, sort of reassessing again, like you said earlier, the strategy that you have, if you have a strategy, if it's working, if not, what's not working about it, and how can you tweak it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, built like just going off of that, right? So let's say your goal is to work at Obsidian, right? And you're a newcomer. You know, with that kind of focus, you can be like, all right, well, instead of networking with the entire world, I'm going to focus on networking with people who either work at Obsidian or have connections with people who work at Obsidian, and
Yeah.
kind of be in their world as much as I possibly can. I've had clients that did that too, who were like, they were just, I was like, well, where do you really want to work? And they're like, I want to work here. And I was like, okay, good. Now that you've declared that, right? And you can see that there's more than one way to break in. Like, what do you want to do? And what she wound up doing actually is going and she got hired to help them with a trade show. And she met everybody at this company that were like decision makers and could help her. And they all know her by a first name basis.
Yep.
They've helped her get jobs since then, right? It's just sort of like that focus is really what you need. And that can kind of take the stress too off of like, well, who is it I'm supposed to network with?
Yeah.
It's just like, well, make a list of 10 companies that you want to work for and start there. Yeah. I mean, and just kind of to sort of bag and tag that, one of the things I often say too is just stay in action and stay out of the results, right?
Yeah.
Just do the things. Don't worry about the outcomes,
Yeah.
You've got to build on that stuff, but don't let perfection stand in the way of you taking action, you
And
know?
that alone, that point alone is, we could do a whole episode on that. Honestly,
I know,
I mean, that
exactly.
is, ooh, boy, do I suffer from that whole. I have to remind myself a lot that what's the saying? Perfection is the enemy of action, I think, or something like that,
Or
or
yeah, the
the
best is
enemy
the
of,
enemy of the good.
yeah, something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is, wow, pain point for me right there.
I
So
know. I mean, I suffer from it too, you know. I'll be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna post this thing on LinkedIn until I've got
Yeah.
it just perfect, just dialed in so perfectly."
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man, it's just gotta go. It's
You
gotta
just got to
go.
ship it. You just
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
ship
gotta
it.
ship it.
It's
Ship
it's
the
similar.
email.
It's similar to the idea that a lot of people are doing now of creating in the open. I think is what they're calling it. We as game marketers are so used to you do everything in secret. You don't talk about
Mhm,
anything. You never waste a beat. Like we
mhm.
have to stay quiet. And then when it's the optimal time, to say something or to make an announcement or whatever, that's when we do it. That's when we hit. The trend now is the opposite, where you're learning to do these things out there in the wild, and you're sharing not only the successes but the failures and the mistakes you're making, so that you can show other people that process, that learning process. I think that's really interesting. It's something that I love seeing people do, and it's something that the idea of doing it myself absolutely terrifies me, which is probably a sign I should try it. you know,
Exactly.
um, I really think so. So
I mean, that's an amazing philosophy, Joe. I
it
just
is,
like
yeah,
that's, um, like I can see how it would create more stress for creators and how it could create less stress for creators. But I mean, it's kind of like, the algorithm, is a living, breathing thing right now. You
yeah,
just don't
absolutely.
know what you're going to get. I mean, I've put together things that I thought, oh my God, this is going to crush so hard. And I'm like,
Yeah,
three people like this? Like,
trust
what the
me,
hell just
trust me.
happened?
Professional social media manager, trust me, I get it. I literally I have put in hours of planning into one post, like series of posts, one campaign, and
Hmm.
and it flops, and I'm thinking, what happened? This was so cool. Like I would love
Hmm.
this kind of content if I were our audience. And
Hmm.
then I've also one time from the GameStop Twitter account, I just tweeted hi, and it just blew up. It was insane.
Of course, right.
So you're like, what am I doing here? Like what? it's
Hmm.
it's it's impossible to figure that stuff out.
The only thing that drives me is just like I have to say to myself, if only one person got something out of this, it was worth it,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's just kind of what I have to go with. And yeah, I flop all the time.
So on a similar point, what advice would you have for candidates who are transitioning from like another industry and they want to get into video games? How can they make the experience that they have in whatever industry that they're leaving relevant to coming into gaming?
Yeah, I mean, it's not dissimilar from people who are like trying to break in and what we just talked about. I think the thing is like to a lot of times what I'll have people do who are sort of exploring this is use a tried and true marketing tool called the SWOT analysis. Do you remember that? Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
so for the people who are listening that have never heard of this, a SWOT analysis, it's an acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a really good way to do like a full-fledged career inventory, right? Where you can look at like, okay, what really are my strengths? The things that I do better than most, the things that like I feel like I'm an expert at, right? So you can kind of bring that into the foreground. Look at your weaknesses too, right? And like things that you don't do well, because again, I think you're going to want to kind of trim away that fat as you're developing a story, for yourself that's going to help you transition into the world of games. And you might be able to look at some of those weaknesses and then flip them on their head and be like, all right, maybe these are opportunities for me to grow, right? The
Yeah.
opportunity section is really important though, right? Like what can you bring, based on your experience that you see in the industry as something that's needed, right? That was something that I thought about when I was going from like music and entertainment, like more traditional entertainment over to games, right? I was like, there is a need for better storytelling. There really, really is. At the time that I came in, I think it was, early 2010s, right? It was just sort
Hmm.
of like I was just seeing a lot of the same stuff over and over again, copycat stuff. It really was just like it seemed like it was stale and they were stuck in this hamster wheel. So I was like, I know, because like when you're working in music or television or film, and you got to be on your toes, or you are, it's just like instant fail. And I was like, I
Yeah.
think I got the storytelling chops that could kind of take you to the next level. And I believed in that, right? So I walked in with that, but I didn't do that. Like until I had done this work, I was failing at basically telling
Yeah.
my own story
Yeah.
to publishers and gaming things. And then your threats, right? So just have an awareness around it, right? And one of the threats is probably like, well, I haven't worked in this industry for a while, but you know, um, having an awareness around that is going to kind of give me a little bit of clarity around direction. Like, well, maybe my first gig isn't going to be straight to AAA. Maybe I'm going to be working with an indie studio. Maybe I'm going to be working in like a peripheral business, right? I would say like based on all of that too, put a bow on it is just like really know the business. Take time to get to know what's going on in the business, right?
Yeah.
To not only assess like where you fit in, but also so that when you do go in, you're like, you got this, right? It's just sort of like it's not alien to you anymore. I mean, you really get it. And the clients that I've worked with who have who are striving to do that and actually making some really good progress, I just stress on them. It's like, you've been working in oil and gas for the last 10 years. You've been working in apparel for the last 10 years. Like, you want to have the same kind of knowledge about this industry as you do about those other industries, right? And there's ways to do it without like completely like losing your mind either. Like, businesses are businesses. You just have to kind of plug and play the different parts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in that same vein, sort of from your perspective as a coach, what soft skills and qualities tend to be overlooked? Do you notice? But they're crucial for success in video games, but they're often overlooked. Do you have anything like that come to mind for you?
Oh my God. I would just say,
I'll take that as a
it's so
maybe.
funny because I mean, there's so many, right?
I'll take that as a maybe.
I would say my experience and the the people who are currently working in the industry that are having struggles is all around communication. And it's one of those things that we often will just drop into our resume or cover letters, like I'm a stellar communicator, and just like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's
people
good.
people communication skills. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's sort of like, you understand that, like, there's different personalities out there, and there's a way that you communicate, and it may not be the way that other people communicate. It's a very it's a very subjective thing, right? And when I do more of that management and leadership training, I mean, we spend so much time on that, just like, how are you emailing with people? How are you communicating with them in meetings? How are you standing your ground without coming across as an asshole? I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to
No, it's fine.
curse or not. These types of things. And, eh, you know, one of the things that I mean, I've experienced this. I know not everybody has, and maybe this is just because I came from like music, television, and film. But there's a little less ego in this business. I'm not saying it's completely gone, right? Um, but I think that this business also attracts people who are possibly not the best communicators, who have spent their lives being like kind of quiet and hidden away and everything. And then they get into, and they're not really good at handling conflict. Right. So,
Yeah.
and it's a skill, it's a learned skill. Nobody gets it right on the first time, it takes years, but at least, working on it, I think, is going to be, critical to anybody's success.
Speaking of learned skills, when it comes to resumes and portfolios, what specific elements or approaches do you feel like make candidates stand out in the eyes of hiring managers?
Yeah, again, you're going to hear this a lot. I mean, I've said this a lot already, but it really is like, you're telling a story, right?
Yep.
And that's, I mean, yes, are there certain formats out there that seem to work better than others? For sure, right? Like, I don't think you want to, you don't want to lead your resume with like, 6 bullet points on your education. I literally just saw that today. But aside from that, it's like, the way I see it is that we're human beings, and human beings gravitate towards story more than they gravitate towards just hearing the facts, right? And I think this comes across not only in your resume but your portfolio, right? When you know what your professional identity and what the story is that you're trying to tell, then you can kind of like the way you present yourself in a portfolio is going to look different. The hierarchy, the things that you want to present, first, as opposed to last, and what story you want your portfolio to tell, right? But I find that when you get that part right, that everything else just kind of becomes intuitive, right? Because let's say you've got, a nice, juicy, headline, tagline, you've got a little bit of a professional summary, but that's all based in like a really good story that you've developed on yourself, then everything in your experience is supporting that story, right? So everything feels like contextualized and it's congruent, and you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like I don't read this and think to myself like, oh, like I don't get what this guy is all about,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've talked a little bit about storytelling a few times here. I feel like that term's come up, and what's interesting is I can see where people, and I mean, even myself, having been in game marketing now for over 10 years, storytelling, that can be a weird term for people, right? Like, what's my story?
Mm-hmm.
When you tell somebody, hey, tell your story, that's the best way forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably more common than we realize for people to sort of take that and think, what is my story? How do I tell my story? What are your tips on kind of for people how to figure that out, and then how to communicate that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of shortcuts that I like to use. For instance, when telling your story from a professional perspective, and I've had people get tripped up as well. Like, oh, okay, so I'm supposed to like tell my origin story, like what kind of why I got into video games. Is like no. But you can do effective storytelling from a professional perspective, right? I always look at sort of like, there's three areas that you can focus on, like who you are, what's your identity, what do you do, what's your role, right? Which is very important, and you really have to declare that. I am a senior producer. I am a 3D animator. Whatever it is, I am a community. I am an esports community manager, right? Just claim it, own it, right? Don't get symbolic. Don't try to, generalize it or anything like that, because I think that's just, you're going to fall down some pretty steep holes there. Talk about your value, right? What do you bring to the table? Show people how you think about things and how you problem solve. And then the last thing, and this is a part that everybody skips, is like, what impact have you made? What outcomes have happened as a result of the work that you've done? What can your prospective employer expect from you from a results basis if they should hire you, right? If you focus on those three things, at least just to start, I think you'll get a really solid story together, right? But people have this tendency to be like, well, I've been told I just need to stuff a bunch of keywords into my resume so that the ATS picks it up, and then that way I'll be good. And I'm just sort of like, you forget there's like human beings are going to be reading
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
stuff at the end of the
Getting past
day.
the ATS is only the first step, or one of the
Yeah.
first steps, and yeah.
Yeah, like if you're just like jamming a bunch of keywords in, and then you get to the actual human being and they read your thing, it's like, wow, this is like the tastiest word salad I have ever seen, and no thank you, right? As opposed to like, hey, I got one shot to really show these people what I'm all about, you know?
Yeah.
That's the way that I look at it. And, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, I've had people who have, against their best judgment, walked away from this idea that they had to, you know, carve up a bunch of different like words and terms to show people that they knew how to do the job. And it's like, they called you because you know how to do the job. What they want to know is, how do you do it? And when you do it, what happens? And oh, by the way, we're big on culture. Everybody's big on culture fit now, right? Like,
Sure.
are you a good hang?
Yeah.
You know? I will say this too. A lot of people will leave this for the cover letter, but I'm telling you, most people don't read your cover letter. So I feel it's important to get this in the resume to at least give them a peek into like the kind of person that you are.
Absolutely. So coming up on this last kind of big major question. It's kind of a two-parter. It's kind of a two-parter, but I've been asking it in every episode so far, and I think I'm getting some great insights from it. So first, what's a common mistake you notice your clients or just other candidates in the industry making in their job search? And second, what's your top piece of advice for people on how they can improve what they're doing?
I mean, I've kind of mentioned it already, but I'll try to sort of synthesize it here. I think the biggest mistake that people make is not having a strategy. You know, it's just the biggest, they just, you know, and they're not building on it. You know, they may have a strategy that they ripped off of a YouTube video or a Google search or something like that. But like, what is it that you really want out of your career, right? Because people can smell that when you're, you know, if your goal is to work for another company, they want to know that you're like in it to win it, right? And this is about, and you're all about what they're all about, right? And without a really definitive strategy, it's just gonna be a little wonky for a while, right? So, you know, rewind this podcast to when I talk about the 3 levels, really, and try to feel around like how that can help you put together a strategy. But like, yeah, just like have a vision, have a plan, right? And to, you know, the second question is like, what's one tip, right? And that is to stop thinking black and white, you know, stop thinking that there's only one way to do this, and that's that. And I tried the one way and it doesn't work for me. Therefore, ergo, this industry sucks, or I suck, or you know, whatever. You know, blame. You know, you can blame yourself. Just like try something different. You know, be willing to say like, all right, I don't get this. You know, let me go learn something else. Let me go figure something else out. You know, it's like, it's just like playing a game. I mean, it's crazy how literal we can make this like, you know, this connection between like our careers and trying to achieve an objective.
Yeah.
Right. In a game. And we a lot of people I talk to like just don't think in those terms when it comes to this stuff, because again, it's just sort of that simple idea of like, well, they're just stuck in this black and white thought pattern of like, you know, these are the gatekeepers and I just have to, you know, say what they want to hear and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, it's not, that's just, not only is that not how this industry works, it's just not how the world works.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more than one way to get it done. So listen, hey, we'll wrap it up here, but Adam, thank you again so much. Where can people connect with you?
So, best way to hit me up is you can go to gamingcareers.gg to learn about what I do. If you're interested in having a strategy session around how to, you know, get better results out of your career, you can book that, you know, straight from the website. Another place that I'm really super active is on LinkedIn, and I think it's /the Adam Hobbs, TheAdamHobbs. Cool. So either place is a great place to start. And yeah, I hope to hear from some people. Like I said, I love helping people out, and you know, every conversation that I have with somebody is it's good for them and it's good for me. You know?
Yeah, 100%. And we'll have those links in the show notes on GameIndustryJobHunt.com. So everybody make sure to check those out as you're listening to this. But yeah, man, listen, Adam, thank you again so much. This has been amazing. I really appreciate it. We'll have to get you back on again soon and chat some more. Yeah, that'd be great. But thanks again, and I will see you on the old LinkedIn.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, folks, I hope you got as much out of that as I did. That was an amazing conversation with Adam. Really appreciate him being on the show. Big thanks to him. Big thanks to you for listening. Also, hey, don't forget, please leave a review for the show wherever you're listening to this so we can grow this thing, all right? I want to grow this thing, but I need your help. So leave us a good review. Let us know how we're doing. Really appreciate that. Again, visit GameIndustryJobHunt.com for resources, links, show notes, all that good stuff. In the meantime, keep on pushing, all right? And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.